Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Ideas Hive. My name is Kristen Anderson. I am the Chief Branch Officer of Ideas for Us, and we've got a great conversation for you today about a just transition to sustainability with Jillian Cruickshank from Central Florida Jobs with Justice. But before I introduce our amazing speaker, I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about Ideas for Us and what we do in the community. So if you aren't familiar with us, our mission is to develop, fund, and scale solutions that solve the world's most pressing environmental issues. And so basically what that means is that every month we break down a specific environmental topic and educate our audience about it through the Ideas Hive. So we bring in an expert and we gather the community together and we engage the community in a conversation about the issue and also ask them, how do we solve this global problem with a local solution? And then we take those solutions talked about in the Hive meetings and brought to our attention from the community, and we create an eco action project every single month for that issue. And we usually end up creating more than one, have like 3 or 4 different opportunities to get involved in climate solutions every single month. So we're educating, engaging, and mobilizing volunteers in long-term climate solutions, not only here in Orlando, but also in our branches around the world. And every month we focus on a different pillar of sustainability with energy, water, food, waste, and ecology. So we cycle through these different pillars in order to not oversee or overlook any areas of sustainability, because climate change is a very complicated issue. So we have to take an integrative approach and take all these things into consideration. And so that gives us the opportunity to have a really new and fun eco action project every single month, varying between solar workshops and waste audits and tree plantings and so much more. And we do this because we believe that this information and this opportunity to educate yourself on climate change should be very available to communities. You shouldn't have to go out of your way to learn about these issues. We want to bring it to the attention of the community, but not just stop at talking about the problem, also give people the opportunity to take hands-on eco action projects all month long. So if you like what you see, please consider donating to support this mission. You can donate to support a specific project that aligns with some of your interests. So if you want to donate to support a pollinator garden or a beach cleanup or a garden installation, you can choose what your money goes to. Just visit us at ideasforus.org/donate. And also check out our podcast. We've been coming out with a lot of new interesting ones about sustainable innovation globally. So please check that out at anchor.fm/ideasforus. You can also see it on our website. So today, like I said, we have Jillian Cruickshank from Central Florida Jobs with Justice here with us. She is outside and it is probably going to storm, so bear with us, but we should be good, and we have a really great conversation for y'all today. So thank you so much, Jillian, for being here.
Thank you, Kristen. I work for Central Florida Jobs with Justice, and we have a coalition that's called Central Florida Climate Action, where we are trying to address environmental justice issues in Central Florida. And today I have a presentation on building just transition in our community and in our nation. And it's important to discuss that transition will be inevitable, like energy transition and jobs transition, but justice is not inevitable, and it's a fight that we have to address head on. So, one of the core foundations that we base our organizing off of are the Jimenez Principles. They're listed below, and we use all 6 of these and all of the work that we do to make sure that we're addressing justice in a way that's inclusive to everyone. We emphasize the people that are on the bottom that we're trying to support through our organizing, as well as speaking for ourselves and not speaking for other people. Our voices matter, and so do everybody else's, as well as working together through solidarity and mutuality, building just relationships among ourselves as organizers and the community, and a commitment to self-transformation. The goal of just transition, or the goal of this presentation, is to introduce just transition, the framework of just transition in the work that we do, and the key terms that we use during this discussion. So just transition is a vision-led, unifying place-based set of principles. So the processes and practices build economic and political power to shift away from an extractive economy into a regenerative economy, and I'll explain what that means in depth more so in like a minute. This means that we have to address production and our consumption styles holistically, and addressing like waste-free processes, and the tradition itself must be equitable. So we must address past harms while creating new relationships for power through reparations within our communities that have been disenfranchised. If this process of transition is not justice-based, then the outcome will never be what we actually want to achieve throughout this process. So we want to be able to like clearly describe where we want to go and what we want to achieve. And so the history and context of just transition and the strategies that have taken root were forged through labor unions and environmental justice groups. Those groups focus on low-income communities of color and are intended to phase out industries that harm workers as well as their community and the planet as a whole. And at the same time, present pathways for workers to transition to other jobs. And the transition has to address the polluting industries and our allegiance with frontline and fence line communities. So through this context, it's very essential that we talk about environmental justice as a movement, which was a response to the systems of environmental racism and that have, again, like I mentioned earlier, disproportionately affected communities of color and low-income individuals. And we have to expose the negative impacts that they have had on industrial practices and like their impacts through pollution. But the environmental justice movement has roots in the civil rights movement, which is a sharp contrast to the mainstream environmental movement, which has failed to understand and address injustices. And the EJ movement emphasizes bottom-up organizing, centering those voices of those most impacted and sharing community leadership, which directly correlate to the Jimenez principles that we discussed a minute ago. So this diagram on the left-hand side shows an extractive economy, and then on the right-hand side is the transition that we want to achieve. So the extractive economy is what we have right now, and we want to get over to the right-hand side, ideally. And the only way you can do that is through addressing changes in policies and a just transition in the de-investation of power into like our communities and communities that need their voices to be uplifted. And then on the next slide, the pillars of the extractive economy, they concentrate on the enclosure of wealth and power, which is the system that we live in right now. So while like the global 1% and corporations have their government policymakers who do a lot of their work and are highly lobbied, we're trying to shift away from that to address poverty and also create like opportunities. So like the main part of extractive economy that like we want to look at is the history of slavery and genocide that dispossesses people of their land and the wholesale erosion of our biological and cultural diversity, of like which we need to survive. So moving forward into the next slide, which is the pillars of regenerative economy, we want to look at regenerative resources, which will focus on the efficiency and also the resiliency of our communities, as well as the collaboration and competition within the purpose of our ecological and social well-being, and also having a focus on diversity in our work and the voices in our work from all classes and all colors and all religions and everyone, because the voices in a lot of environmental organizing in the past have been predominantly white male voices, and we have to shift to focus on communities that are the ones that are the most impacted. And the only way we can get to a regenerative economy is through those means. So on the next slide, we have the principles of just transition. So the first one is grand behavior, where we can, sorry, there is a bug in my face. That is one of the things of being outside, where we have to, which directly translates to good life. And we want to live well without living at the expense of other people, which means we need to look at our workers, community residents, women, indigenous peoples all around the world, and make sure that they have their fundamental human rights to clean and healthy air, water, land, food, education, and shelter. And the rights of these communities and the natures that they deserve are the rights of those individual groups, as well as self-determination, which all people have the right to participate in decisions that impact their lives through like local democracy and things like that. Our communities are able to have their voice of self-determination, and also that gives them the tools that they need to create a world that actually does listen to them. And the people who are most affected by the extractive economy, like I said earlier, are the frontline workers and the fence line communities who have, sorry, I got really bright, have resilience and expertise in the leadership and crafting of solutions. So on the next slide, we also have more principles of the just transition. The first is meaningful work at Just Transition, centered on the development of human potential, creating opportunities for people to learn, grow, and develop to their full capacities and interests. So we're all born leaders, and through a regenerative economy that supports and nurtures that leadership within each one of us. So it makes it so that our work is meaningful work and also affirming to what we're trying to accomplish through all of this work of making sure people are protected in a new regenerative economy. And then the other one is an equitable distribution of resources and power. So we have to work to build this new system for the good of all people and not just for some people, in which the system that is currently in place works. So Just Transition actively works against the historical social inequities based off of race, class, gender, immigration status, and all other forms of oppression. Just Transition fights to reclaim capital and resources for the regeneration of geographies and sectors of the economy where these inequalities are most pervasive. Sorry, there's a truck. And then on the next slide are some of the last ones where we have to address regenerative ecological economics. So in order to advance our resilience, we have to reduce our consumption, which will in turn restore biodiversity and undermine extractive economies, which includes capitalism that erodes the ecological basis of our collective well-being. This requires a relocation of democratized production and consumption. So we have to live well without living at the expense of others, much like the first principle. And also culture and tradition, which in our current system of capitalism has forced many communities to sacrifice their culture and traditions for their economic survival. So, as well as defacing and destroying land that was held sacred by the native peoples. So just transition creates inclusive spaces for all traditions and cultures, recognizing them as integral to a healthy and vibrant economy. It also makes reparations for the land that has been stolen and destroyed by capitalism, colonialism, the patriarchy, and genocide and slavery to those people. And on the next slide, we want to focus on solidarity through this work. A just transition must be liberatory and transformative. The impacts of extractive economy doesn't have any borders as it exists right now. We recognize that the interconnectedness of our communities as well as our issues, therefore our solutions call for local, regional, and national, so federal, and global solidarity that confronts the imperialism and militarism that have kept these systems in place, as well as builds on what we need to know. So on a small scale, we must expand to begin to displace those extractive practices. And we build and flex the muscles we need to build our communities stronger. On the next slide, we have some false solutions that have been presented. So some false solutions extract and further concentrate wealth and power. And through this, the examples are things like carbon trading and market-based incentives. And then false solutions, including poisoning, displacing, and imprisoning our communities, which I've worked with ideas for us before, and we have OUC, a perfect example of this is the conversation of clean coal, or in transition from fracking and nuclear is better than coal. Those are still extractive means. And also another example of this is the incarceration system in America. And then the false solutions to reduce the climate crisis to a crisis of just carbon. But that's not a really fair assumption, because that's dumbing down the issue to one issue that seems addressable when the issue goes so much deeper. If we actually want to make changes and we actually want to have an economy that works for everyone and not just the few. And then on the next slide, we have a quote that says, "Social inequity is a form of ecological imbalance and will therefore inherently lead to ecological erosion, as we have seen in an extractive economy. What you do to the land, you do to the people, and what you do to the people, you do to the land. This is why we cannot separate social equity from ecological restoration." And that's what I have for everybody. So if we have any questions, I'd love to hear them. I know it can be convoluted and it can be a lot. It's a lot to process and a lot to intake. So
yeah, thank you so much. That was a really great summary of this essential conversation that we need to have as we are moving into sustainable systems, not leaving any groups behind, and the conversation of okay, well, we do need to switch to solar energy. Well, what about all the people working in coal? And it's such a complicated issue. And so it's really important that we educate ourselves about it as we move into these solutions and make integrative approaches to it. So thank you so much for your time. Anybody who's watching, please go ahead and put your questions in the comments. We will take them now. My first question is, what is something that Central Florida Jobs with Justice is doing to approach this problem in the community? And is there any way that people can get involved?
Yeah, so at CFCA, we are working to get the Thrive Agenda passed, which is a federal, so it's, okay, so let me explain it in a way. So the Green New Deal got re-presented to legislature, the House legislature, as the Thrive Agenda. So we're working to get our state representatives, I don't need to name names here because I don't think that would be what anybody wants me to do, but we're working to get our local legislature to commit to supporting the Thrive Agenda when it gets brought to the House. So that's one thing. And the Thrive Agenda, we were talking about it today. It's presented to create, I think, like 16 million jobs or something like that through the transition to clean energy jobs. So that is one way that we're addressing just transition and just trying to work. And there will be concessions, but we're really trying to get that legislature passed so that we can at least have a step in the right direction in this fight.
That's great. That's really, really important. A question from the audience. Would you be able to give an example of a market-based solution that you referenced?
So a market-based solution, the best that I can think of off the top of my head would be just transition from like dirty energy jobs to clean energy jobs in a way that is equitable to the people that are transitioning. So making sure that those people have all of the resources that they need, like language-based resources and things like that, to make sure that their transition is easy and addresses the person like head on, so that they're not being left behind in a transition.
Yeah, that's really important. And also, even as an individual, you can take some actions to kind of support equitable work. For example, shopping local and trying not to support businesses that don't pay or treat their farm workers very well. Do you have any other examples of ways that individuals can kind of put their money where their mouth is and invest in this transition?
Yeah, the best way through policy, the best way will be to contact their legislature to encourage them to vote for like bills like acts like the Thrive Act. So another way that it would be good is to just continue to educate not only yourself, but people within your circles. Because once you've educated your circle, that circle spreads even further. And those people can continue to educate outside of their circle. And then you have a chain reaction of education on the base level of things, so that, because there's not conversations that are being had on a daily basis about just transition in every circle, which has been something that I've come across after being educated and then thrown into the world and being like having normal conversations with normal people off of the street. They wouldn't know what a just transition of jobs is. So once you have a base knowledge, share that with whoever you can, and they will go on to then have that knowledge forever so they can share it.
Awesome. I love that charge. Yes, tell your friends, tell your families, bring it up as much as you can. We really need to educate people about it. And also, just so that I'm more clear on some of the terminology that you used, how would you describe a frontline and fence line community?
So frontline communities are the workers in your community. So that would be like your grocery store worker, that could be your mailman, that could be anybody. These are the workers that have been at the same time the most impacted by COVID, because they have had to work the entire time we've been in a pandemic and they haven't been addressed. So their work is they never got to stop working because they are necessary to keep our economies alive. And then fence line communities are communities that are right outside, and like a lot of fence line communities would be right around like where the coal plants and things like that are. So they're the ones that are, again, directly impacted by environmental erosion and things like that are caused by these industries that don't particularly care how the communities are impacted.
Yeah, and going off of that point, do you have any examples of environmental justice issues local to, the Central Florida area? Because I know that it's a big conversation here, and there's a lot of local examples that I feel like you shared that would be impactful for our audience, if you have any.
Yeah, I mean, the only things, I've just been working on the OUC transition for a while, and there are communities in Avalon, which is outside of the OUC coal plant, where the ash drifts directly onto those communities, and their children are actually the ones that are the most impacted by that. And there are cases of very rare cancers and things like that, where there is a desperate need for change because communities aren't being paid attention because of the extractive economy that we live in.
Okay. And that's also a great example of some environmental racism issues also in our community, where lower income areas are often the ones mostly impacted by these injustices. And so that's why this conversation really needs to be uplifted as much as possible. And also a question about what you said a moment ago. How does reducing consumption restore traditional ways of life? I think that's a really interesting idea that I kind of want to just break down a little bit, because of course, theoretically it makes sense, but if you have a better understanding of how that actually happens, I would love to hear it. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, so how... Sorry, can you repeat the question one more time? It cut out.
Yeah, how does reducing consumption restore traditional ways of life?
Yeah, so with that, when we say reducing consumption, we're not really talking about the individual. We are talking about the corporations and like the industries, because as much as the individual does have power, you have to address things at a scale. Like, we have to shift the blame, I guess, to the people that are really truly responsible. And we aren't the ones that are responsible for climate change. The people that are responsible are the people that are overproducing because it is economically viable for them to do so. So when we say like reduce consumption, we're trying to put pressure on different industries to shift their business model, which directly impacts the lives and livelihoods of people in our communities. But then at the same time, like, addressing things on like a personal scale is helpful, but it's not the best way to address a shift to a regenerative economy.
Okay. Awesome. And so this transition should happen, and it should happen quickly, as all approaches to climate change needs to happen. Do you know of any threats that are directly threatening this transition locally and internationally or nationally?
Yes. I mean, the biggest threat is these industries are the people that have the money. And they have the money to buy the lawyers and to defend their work models. And we have to take the grassroots approach of person-to-person organizing to make it so that our voices are heard. And they do get heard if there are enough of us. So the best way to do that is through policy change and establishing new policies that are targeted to protect people and their voices.
Absolutely. And then to close out and kind of give a charge to our audience, how can we participate in local solidarity?
The best way to show your solidarity through this work is to continue to absorb your surroundings. See what's happening in your world and in your communities, because you would be surprised about what is happening in every single one of our communities in Central Florida. There are blatant acts of racism that need to be addressed, but they aren't being talked about because those communities are disenfranchised and don't have the voices. So we build up those voices, seek out community leaders, and listen to their voices and listen to their stories and uplift them would be my call to action.
Awesome. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Jillian. You've been super helpful and enlightening, on all honesty. So thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah. Thank you guys for having me. If you guys have any more questions, my email is Jillian@Central Florida Jobs with Justice. So CFJ with J. And I will answer any questions if anybody needs anything or wants to learn anything more.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. And we'll also put your website in the comments below so that people can find ways to get involved and also take the next step in participating in this action. So thank you so much, Jillian. I also want to encourage our audience to always research the companies that they're buying from if you're able to. And if you do have the time and the resources to buy from more sustainable companies that are fair trade, making sure that it's not a scam, I would really like to encourage everybody to participate that because every dollar matters. And upcoming, we do have some awesome programming coming up. So we've got a solar powered movie night for our energy month. We're going to be showing The Year the Earth Changed, which is basically a breakdown of how nature has adapted and thrived after lockdown happened. And we're announcing the venue tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. We're going to have free Lazy Moon vegan pizza. So definitely want to reserve your spot for that as soon as you can. And then we're doing a Wekiva Island Springs cleanup in partnership with Fridays for Future. We're super excited for that. We might have some kayaks that we can go out and actually take the trash right out from the spring and just really appreciate nature and each other in that experience while also cleaning up our planet. And then we are partnering with Spiral Circle Bookstore to do a pollinator garden at the Cayley Square Park across from our headquarters over in Paramore. So if you're interested, please go ahead and go to their website or in person. You can shop either one from the 16th to the 22nd of May. And they're going to be donating a percentage of all sales to this pollinator garden. It's a really cool bookstore, so definitely check it out. They have a lot more than just books. And then we're going to be doing the native pollinator garden installation at the end of May. So if you're interested, you can go ahead and sign up for that now. It's on our Facebook. The Eventbrite link is there. And you can really participate in not only learning about our native pollinators, but also creating a habitat for them as well. And our next hive, we're going to have Glenn Providence from Ebony Nutrition talking about the nutrition transition that we really need to have in our community and nationally. So I'm really excited for that conversation. So definitely want to be there for that. We're hoping to have our hives in person by late summer or later. We're still trying to figure that out, but hopefully we will be in person again soon once we believe that it is safe. But thank you all so much for sticking around for all these online hives. It's been so much fun hosting with you and also all of our Eco Action Days in person. So thank you all so much for being here and I'll see you next time.